Hi everybody and welcome to Kevin Reads. Today we're reviewing Looking for Alaska by famous author and infamous YouTube personality John Green. The book is John Green's first novel, published in 2005 and the recipient of the 2006 Prince Award. John Green is well known in the YouTube community as one half of Vlogbrothers, along with his brother Hank. Looking for Alaska is about a boy named Miles Halter who goes away to a boarding school in Alabama. There he makes friends with his roommate, who's known as the Colonel, and falls helplessly for a girl named Alaska. John Green is not one for shallow storytelling, though. He manages to use the students' lives and the subjects of their coursework to investigate some pretty deep ideas, such as the inevitability of suffering, coming to terms with circumstances outside our control, and reconciling our perception of situations with reality. You'll also notice as you read the book that John breaks apart his chapters with titles like 136 Days Before. This lends a bit of an ominous tone to the book that we'll talk more about after the break. But first, it's time for the quick review. Writing quality? Very good. Happiness index? Sad. Cultural relevance? Important. Should I read it? Duh! Next week's book will be An Abundance of Catherines by the same author. Stay tuned for spoilers after the break. So real quick disclaimer, I don't have a background in literature, so you're not going to hear me talking about allegory and symbolism and metaphor and all that sort of stuff. What you are going to hear me talk about is what I thought of the book, the questions that it raised, and what it made me think about. I'm not so interested in evaluating it as a piece of literature, so much as thinking about how it affects the world around us and how we live our own lives. If you want to dissect the book further, John Green is really awesome and he has QA Tumblr accounts set up for all of his works. There'll be a link in the description, you can go and look at some of his analysis of Looking for Alaska. So Alaska's death was not a huge surprise. I think with the book title and the chapter headings, it was pretty clear that something bad was going to happen to her character. What was a surprise is how little her character had really developed before that happened. In fiction, we're used to someone either being a red shirt that just goes off and dies right away, or some big, meaningful character that dies for some tragic, poetic reason. I think John Green denies us this to help us reflect more on the deeper questions in the book. So obviously one of the big themes of this book is how do we deal with suffering, and that's reflected in the world religions class and in Alaska's book and ultimately through the lives of the characters. What's interesting to me is that it's presented as quite clear from a religious perspective, if you belong to the Abrahamic tradition, that suffering is assuaged by kind of anticipating a life everlasting in which there is no suffering, whereas with Buddhism you have the whole idea that suffering comes from desire for things that we don't have control over, and so the way to alleviate the suffering is to give up that desire for, changelessness, or to not grow old, or to not be poor, and that sort of thing. But what's interesting is none of the characters seem to be able to just adopt any one of these philosophies, right off the bat, and I think that's got to be true for all of us. For me, it's really a question of, it's a question that I will continually wrestle with. I think right now my philosophy is just that I will gladly accept the suffering for the privilege of getting to live in this world. But it's kind of an ongoing thought process in my mind, and I'd be interested to know what you guys think. Another idea in the book is how do we come to terms with delusion, and that's how does Miles reconcile who he perceived Alaska to be with, the reality of who she was. I think we've all sort of experienced this at some point in our lives, or whether we've dated someone that we put up on a pedestal and then been disappointed with, or we've written someone off as being, not worth our time, and then they come back and surprise us. Or, do you go even simpler, either, maybe a celebrity crush, or, falling in love with a fictional character, or even someone in a dream. How do you deal with the fact that they're not, that what's in your brain is not in line with reality? This is one where honestly I don't have an opinion yet. I'm still working on it, but I'm glad that the book made me think of it. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Again, let me know in the comments what you guys think. Overall, I really like this book. It wasn't necessarily my favorite of the John Green books that I've read, but I really like the questions that it made me think about and the ideas that it kind of brought to the front of mind. I'd be interested to know what questions it raised for you, and just in general what you guys thought of the book. If you liked this book, I'm going to recommend that you read M. Butterfly by David Henry Hwang. This is a wonderful play, and it actually won the Tony Award for Best Play in 1988. It's about a man who also has to reconcile his perception of who someone is versus who they actually are, though in a completely different way. Next week, we'll be reviewing John Green's An Abundance of Catherines, which is probably his least popular work, but honestly one of my favorites. If you have a book that you'd like to see reviewed, please let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for weekly reviews, and I will see you with An Abundance of Catherines on Sunday.